Just dive right in. We don't have to
jump in and do it. You start us out this time.
You think so?
I think you should
Why?
try. Because I'd love to hear how you do it better than I do.
I don't feel the pressure to like do an intro. So here's how I'd start it. You ready? Hey everybody, it's me, Jared. Hey everybody, it's me, Jared.
And this is Daniel.
Welcome back to the Launch Point Podcast.
Episode 4? 5?
I don't know.
We missed a week, and I'm really sorry for that. I had a tough week, but we're
That's all
back,
right.
and it is so good to be here. Whatever day this episode is dropping.
Yeah, we haven't decided yet if it's
We
gonna...
don't know, but we are so glad that you are here.
Hey, we're glad y'all been listening. We've been watching the numbers, and we're easily clearing like 6-7 people a week.
I've got to count on both hands pretty soon. I'm really excited about that
Fired
day.
up.
But, you know, we're also really excited because we have a very special guest. Jared, when we first discussed doing this podcast that we are doing together, I actually sat down and made a list of about 30 different episode ideas.
Yep.
Different guests, different people.
And today we've got number 31 on
That's
that list.
Right. And I brought that list to someone, and I said, dude, I'm so excited. We're starting a podcast. He was very supportive. And then I showed him where he was at on the list, and it wasn't in the top like 2 or 3. And I think he was offended, but he agreed to be on the podcast. He jumped from number 6 to number whatever episode we are right now.
4?
I think so.
I think so.
We'd like to welcome to the podcast a man of many titles, a man of many names,
Keep going. Say more nice things.
a man who signs my check, Director of Missions of the Sabine Natchez Baptist area, your friend and mine, Jimmie Neel.
Jimmy.
Well, hello.
It's good to see you, Jim.
It's where I wish we had rights to like the Godfather music. We could play
Don't do it too close because it's going to
You're the
buzz us
Dom.
for that. So,
Jimmy.
I get it.
yes. So
That's my.
he made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
That was
Fun
my one
fact.
noise. My.
Here's a fun fact for you guys. 2 years ago today, I officially had the most unbelievable resignation from a ministry position to announce
yeah?
that I was coming to work here. It was the day that a
Stepped
dear
over
friend of mine,
An almost dead guy.
dear,
That's right. I forgot
dear
about
friend Steve Bean, interim pastor at Central Buena, had a cardiac event on the floor of our sanctuary, in the front of the sanctuary during worship, as I was preparing to get up and read my resignation letter, letting them know that I was going to be transitioning over to this position with Jimmie. And so we are so thankful that Steve is great today. He's the reminder for me. He posted on Facebook. It's been 2 years. So anyways, Jimmie, we are so
Jimmy,
glad
what a
to
terrible
have you
intro.
here. I
Welcome.
like to bring down the room before we bring it up. So, Jimmie, we're so glad you're here, man. We have been wanting to get you on the podcast. That's not a joke. But since you listen to this all the time, you kind of know the direction we're headed. We're going to go ahead and get started. So the way we do that, we always talk about the focus of launch is start here, don't stay here. So, Jimmie, we'd just love for you to kind of open up and share with us and our listeners. How did you get started, man? What did salvation look like in your life? I'm assuming you're saved. But what did that look like for you? When did you come to know Jesus? What was it like growing up in your family? Tell us a little bit about yourself, Jim.
Well, I was certainly in a house that talked about Christ on a regular basis. So my dad was not a pastor when I was born. Shortly after I was born, he became a deacon at a church, and we lived in Baytown, Texas. At the time, I was born in Beaumont, but they already lived in Baytown at the time I was born. And so I 9 months before I was born, I was a Southern Baptist, and I've grown up in church my whole life. By the time I was 6 or 7, my dad was at seminary at Fort Worth, and then during his time at seminary, we went to First Baptist Church of White Settlement, or maybe just White Settlement Baptist Church. You know, as a kid, you don't really know the name of your church necessarily. It's just church.
It's got that good Kool-Aid.
It's got the good Kool-Aid. And so, but actually in the basement of that church building.
What state was this in?
This is in Texas.
Okay.
It's not too far,
DFW?
like Carswell Air Force Base up there in Fort Worth area.
Okay.
Well, the Joint Reserve Base or whatever it's called now. So we had an evangelist named James Semple who came to our church, and he was the Baptist General Convention of Texas evangelism director. And he was presented the gospel in a very real way for me. Years later, I found out that, hey, you shouldn't use that verse to share the gospel with, but it was Revelation 3:20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come in and sup with him, and he with me, because I learned it in the King James. And it was just the gospel just became very clear that, this was certainly the work of the Lord's. The salvation was the work of the Lord in my life, but it was something that he desired for me to submit to his lordship. And so I count that as the point of salvation in my life. I walked upstairs, met my mom, and there was a trophy case on the back side of this wall where up the stairs. And the reason I say that is I just told my mom I just became a Christian. I just, as you would say as a young person, I just got saved. And so you did, and she like hugs me and brings me around, and the edge of that trophy case hits me right above my right eye.
Let's go meet Jesus
and so,
right now.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. And so it's just one of those impact moments of my life that really
literally.
just so I really count that moment at 9 years old, becoming a believer in Jesus Christ, kind of owning that for myself. And it wasn't just my parents' faith. It was something that it was made very clear to me what I needed to do in pursuit of what God had already done for me. And so I certainly, when you're 9 years old, I believe I've done probably, let me guess, yes, more sinning since that point. But certainly when the gospel became real was that point in my life. My dad was in seminary during that time, so my dad pastored at Trinity Baptist Church in Jasper, just north of town, and I grew up there, class of 97, Jasper Bulldog.
How long was he there? He was there a while, right?
Yeah, he was there a long time, and then
back.
Yes, so it was his first and third pastorate.
Wow.
And so, in fact, I think he's been there longer now as pastor than he was when I was a kid, because I think he's been back longer.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So you're the oldest sibling.
Yes.
Of how many?
4. So I have a sister and twin brothers.
Twin brother. And how old what was your dad doing for work before y'all loaded up and went to seminary?
Okay, yeah. So my dad was a salesman. He was actually a drug salesman.
All right.
Wait a second.
And so over-the-counter drugs.
It was that kind of white settlement. Okay.
Yes.
Hey.
No. It was Bayer aspirin and Tylenol and toothpaste and all the stuff that you put in a
drugstore.
Drugstore.
Yeah, displays and stuff.
So a lot of Piggly Wigglies and things like that back in the day that don't even exist anymore. But he worked for
Eckerd's.
Yeah. Well, some of that. So he definitely was really good at that.
Yeah.
And the Lord really called him out. We had a affluent life.
Yeah.
Before we got into a get-rich-slow scheme called ministry. And so we definitely, our lives changed. And my siblings really don't remember some of that.
Yeah.
But
Because how old were they?
So my sister is 2 years younger than me, and then my brothers are 2.5 younger than her. And so there's 4 of us, but there's only 5.5 years difference between the 4 of us. So
they loaded up the family.
Yeah, loaded the family, came to Jasper. We served there from, I think, 89, 88, 89, and then through 97. And so the fall, my dad went to Nacogdoches, came back to the area later on. But I went to Angelina College. I really thought I was going to go in ministry. I knew I was going into ministry about 17. 17, really felt like God was leading me in that direction. I went to college at the prestigious Angelina College in Lufkin, Texas.
How well did you do there?
I think I'm still on academic probation. So you do not get course credit. So if you're a student out there listening, about to go into college, you do not get course credit for playing ping pong at the BSU at the same time you're supposed to be in class learning.
What a bummer.
Yeah, you're on campus.
To Forrest Gump.
Yeah,
went to Alabama.
That's true. Or you run really, really fast, and that's yeah. So, I went in the Air Force right after that, and my dad said, "Hey, since I'm not going to pay for college anymore, maybe your uncle will pay for college, Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam.
And so I went into the Air Force, really my choice to go into the Air Force, and I was up in Arkansas. While I was serving in Arkansas, I became an intern pastor.
Now, let's backtrack just for a second. At the end of high school, you met Ann, correct?
Yes, so we worked at East Texas Baptist Encampment together.
Shout out to East Texas Baptist
right.
Encampment, Newton, Texas.
We were on staff under Brother Van Lowe. Ann served there 3 summers. I served 2, and our last summer together there serving, really started dating her, and so I remember I was in the lodge conference room. And I said, hey, would you ever want to go on a date with me? And she goes, I was wondering if you'd ever ask me.
That is the most romantic room in the entire camp. It has a nice window view.
Yes, you have a view of the lake.
Beautiful
Great
view.
call.
And that's right.
Quick shout out for Wes Smith. They are hiring summer helpers for this
right.
summer. You could find your love at etbd.org/summer
I don't think that's
help.
part of the campaign. I don't even think I was supposed to be doing what I did, but it's certainly 20.
It worked out.
25 and a half years of marriage later. It's been pretty.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, so you were married when you went into the Air Force.
No, I was actually married my last week of training school.
Gotcha.
So I went through boot camp at Lackland, was at Keesler in Biloxi, Mississippi. Got married my last week. We came back. We stayed at a real nice hotel called the Howard Johnson, Hojo. It's pretty nice.
I've heard of him.
And right there on the beach, or right there on the in Mississippi, and we had when we went up to Arkansas, we had Ann's car, that the air conditioner went out the last week of August, leaving southern Mississippi going to central Arkansas. So for richer or poorer, for better or worse, it was started.
Found out quick.
Yeah, we found out quick. We do love each other very much.
You have to.
And so we got to Arkansas. I was serving in the Air Force. Then my last 3 years in the Air Force, I was a pastoral intern at the church that we served, and then went to seminary from there. Told my supervisor in the Air Force that, he was worried about me. He said, where are you going to live? What are you going to do for a living? I didn't have a whole lot of answers. And I said, it's not like I'm crazy. God's telling me to go do this. And which is to him was the definition of crazy, there's voices in my head that are telling me to do something. Yeah. And so we went to seminary, served as a associate pastor, youth minister, then associate pastor at a church in Cleburne, Texas. Mm-hmm. And then I was there for 5.5 years.
Fun fact, side note, I had heard of Cleburne before because when I was in college, I bought 100+ T-shirts from our local Goodwill, and somehow ended up with a Cleburne swim team T-shirt in my collection.
Nice.
That I would wear constantly. And in East Texas, I would always get, are you from Cleburne? Are you on this? And I'd have to say, no,
Jimmy, were you on the Cleburne swim team at any point?
I was not. They discouraged full-grown men to be on the swim team.
They probably also discouraged teenage boys from buying 100 shirts at Goodwill. But,
they would have 25-cent Fridays.
Cleburne Yellow Jackets, by the way. So
I knew that.
So I was there for 5.5 years. Our church was right next to the high school. And so we did ministry. We had a lot of Rio Vista, Godly, other communities that were kind of part of our church as well. But and then came down to pastor in Southeast Texas, where I'm from, my stomping grounds, amongst the pine trees and the love bugs. And so,
and what church did you come to pastor?
I came to pastor Mount Olivet in beautiful downtown Fred, Texas.
Literally can't miss it. If you're driving through Fred, you can't miss it. Let me ask you this, because salvation-wise, I had a similar story. Grew up in church, saved around age 8 or 9. Then when I got into youth group and we started going to Hot Hearts and stuff, they would always have the guys come out and give testimony that they were, former drug dealers and paroled felons and had these incredible testimonies. Yeah. And for a long time, and I'm over it now being a grown man now, but there were times in my life where I thought, man, I don't have that cool testimony, I was not rescued out of horrible. I was saved at 9, like you said earlier. What's the worst you've done at 9? Maybe
I could have missed the pain, but I'd have had to miss the dance. So I wanted to at least dance one time,
right?
Yeah, sure.
So did you ever have anything? Because it sounds like you were consistent. You went from pastor's kid to seminary to?
I mean, there's definitely things I regret. There was no prodigal years of wandering. There was, I think, and when I think about that statement, I think back to a little lady that I heard one time say, that she gave her testimony, and she stood up in front of all these people, and she shared, God brought me out of prostitution and drug abuse and all these things, and God brought me out of those things because by His grace, I was born into a Christian home where I was never exposed to those types of things.
Oh, wow.
And so she said, yes, I was saved from all of that, but because it was just earlier on than what other people had the opportunity
That's good.
to see. And I think that's, I don't know if I would say it a different, I don't think I would have said it more eloquently than what she said, because I think that's, I look back and it's very, very similar. Almost wish, man, couldn't I have been a Satanist?
I wish I had a better testimony.
That I could have come out of that.
I got to beef my stats up a little bit.
Yeah. The idea of, Timothy is commended in Scripture because he was raised with the love and admonition of the Lord by his,
mother and
grandmother, Lois and Eunice, and the idea of, and then obviously going into that life of being discipled by the Apostle Paul, and then taking over as the pastor or bishop of Ephesus, and being installed into that ministry. I think that there's a joy in that as well, and I don't think that that sets you aside in some dramatic way, but I think it's probably the carnality of the heart that wants to see the Rudy story come out of a dark well.
Yeah, it is a really stupid thing to say. I wish I had a better testimony.
No, absolutely, because I think it underappreciates what God actually has done in our lives.
Oh yeah, because for all of us, we were dead and now we're alive.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, so. I was just as just as carnal, just as far away from God in the depravity of my sin as anybody. Yeah. So I think that I needed Christ to come.
I just want to make sure I wasn't the only idiot who was
I
really wish I had run some drugs in elementary school.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a question for you. You go from student ministry in Cleburne. Cleburne's DFW area.
Yes.
A little bigger metroplex type stuff.
I was on the swim team.
You go from that to downtown Fred, Texas. You're the new local pastor, first pastor, right? So what was that transition like? I know you know Southeast Texas. You grew up in Jasper.
No, so I'll just everything's I'm gone now. So what's to lose? But my first thought of seeing that posting, that somehow, I don't know if it was David Miller here at the SNBA office or someone that knew me, put my name in their wheelhouse, and they pursued me while I was still serving at Cleburne and said, hey, we'd like to hear from you. We got your resume. Would you mind filling out this Q&A or these questions and answer these things for us? And so I was like, Fred. So I'm from Jasper. I'm like, Fred, did they even have a church? Like, how would that be possible? And so I was like, oh my gosh. And so I legitimately sat down on a Saturday night because they kind of come back to me and said, hey, we hadn't heard back from you, just trying to touch base. And so I sat down and answered those questions. And answering those questions, they had several people on my committee that told me years later, there was nothing on my resume that was like, wow, this is our guy.
Yeah.
But when they read the questions, they said it was so obvious that other people had fallen through because we needed this person to become and be our pastor, which blesses me greatly to this day, because I, for the life of me, do not remember what those answers to those questions are.
I wish we had that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like here. Oh, by the way, here we go. The opening of ministry opportunities that came back, coming back into my neck of the woods. I was already involved in associational life where I was in the Southwest Metroplex Association, and then later on, before that, up in Jacksonville, Arkansas, and then now, obviously, when I got back here, I got really involved in the local association.
Yeah, what was that like for you as a young pastor to be able to come in?
Yeah,
have some peers.
Particularly in a rural setting where there's, I was a single ministry staff position church, and having compadres that you could bounce ideas off of, that was not, you have to float through their bias. They could receive things and think through things. Even older pastors that reached out to me very early on, that said, "Hey, we're praying for you. Let us know if we can help you. Let me come buy you lunch and just sit and visit with you."
Because you guys, when y'all were young, starting here, had some heavy hitting, long tenured senior pastors that were in the area to kind of look up to in some ways,
Very
and
much
probably
so.
laugh at in a lot of different ways. To hear some stories from them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, early on, it was some of the local guys there in. So Clark Mahoney, it was at Hillister at the time, and Jack Llewellyn, who came and said, he was in the Air Force too, and he was in the, he said, "What years did you serve?" And I said, "Oh, I was in from 99 to 06. And he said, "Oh, I was in from 51 to 54, and during the Korean conflict." And I was like, "Oh, that's a little bit different time, different time frame." And so it was just guys who just, "Hey, you're going to be great. You're going to be wonderful. We're excited about young guys coming into our association."
Yeah, because around the same time, so you were, when we first met, I was at Peachtree and Jasper.
Right.
You were at Mount Olivet. Rusty Mott was at Cornerstone,
Right.
Kuntz. John Denby was at
Spurger.
Spurger. And so there was kind of a crop of younger guys, late 20s, early 30s guys. Who,
and people like Jerry Redkey and David Miller. They just saw the opportunity to kind of pour into those young lives and give them opportunities, whether it was for, "Hey, you need somebody for camps. Here's some young guys that would be great at doing some of those things. We need speakers for this event, and we want to bring in these younger voices."
There was a men's retreat where it was the whole weekend.
Yeah.
It was us younger
I did the
guys.
year before, and then the three of y'all did
the
the next year.
Yep.
And so it was just a really cool timeline of kind of doing ministry together, solidified some friendships that have lasted to this day.
Yeah, 20 years and almost.
And so, we're just very appreciative of that timeline.
Yeah.
And so,
and now here we are, becoming the older guys in the area.
Yeah, that's not unaware of me, unaware of where I am, because now it is definitely guys that are in their late 20s, early 30s, coming into our association and realizing.
And Jimmie just turned 62 this
Yes.
year.
All
Thank
right, happy
you.
birthday!
I'll be
that's
40.
amazing.
I'll be 46 this month that we're recording this, and so I'm getting older. So
Well, let's hit the pause button there.
Okay.
Because that's where we came from.
Yes.
Start here, don't
That's
stop
right.
here.
All right.
Start here,
That's
don't
right.
stay here.
Yeah.
So let's take a halftime break, stretch our
Yes.
limbs,
A little bit of
and get
Okay.
to know a different side of you, Jimmie.
okay.
We got 5 random questions here that we're
5
going to ask
random
you.
questions.
Things
Okay.
that you probably have never thought about before,
Okay.
but we're going to make you think about them now.
Oh, thank
There
you.
are no wrong answers. We might argue with you, but there are
We
no
might
wrong.
even share some of our own thoughts.
All right, here we go. Question number 1. You've got to survive 3 hours in a dark room, no windows, no doors, no lights, with 50 snakes or 500 cockroaches. Which one are you going with? It's just 3 hours. 50 snakes or 500 cockroaches.
So there's nowhere to qualify these questions, or
Yeah, you can. You can ask clarification
are
questions.
are any of these snakes poisonous?
I Googled it, and I'm going to say mildly venomous.
Mildly venomous.
Yeah, they do exist.
Welcome to Fear Factor.
Uh,
I'm Joe Rogan.
There's a
500. How big is the room?
This size.
this size. So what is this room? Probably, we'll say 10 by 10, 12 by 12, something like that.
I mean, this is an old building. There's probably 20 in right here and right now. So, no,
There's no furniture in the room.
I'm going to say 500 cockroaches.
I would say the same. I can stomp out a lot of cockroaches.
You're just going to spend
I'm
the whole
not gonna
3
touch
Creepy
hours.
crawlies. Yeah.
It would just
So a
be me
dark room where I
crying.
can't see, and I'm.
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't think about it being dark.
I said dark, yeah.
I'd rather be in the dark with roaches than snakes. They
Yeah.
can't jump.
Yeah, but see, I think snakes are, at least you know they're staying on the floor, right?
No, they can climb your leg
I'm
or
just-
bite your feet.
I'm just thinking roaches
I mean,
up
that's
on
my
the
immediate
ceiling.
response. I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah, I
That's
think
fine.
that's where my.
All right.
I'm going to say cockroaches. Because 500 seems like they could be up on the walls.
Yeah, that's my fear.
Well,
like raining down on you in the dark.
Yeah, I just feel like that's...
My questions are not as icky. I just want to throw it out there.
We've lost all female listeners at this point.
Well,
both of them.
What do they say? You're never farther than 8 feet from a spider.
Oh yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So.
And you eat.
I don't eat anything like that.
No, they
because
say
I drink
all
my food.
They say in your sleep.
Shout out Sherry Bumstead for crickets that we'll probably see this weekend.
Right.
At the,
You eat 8 spiders a year or something like that in your sleep. You've never heard that?
Close your mouths when you sleep.
You've never heard that?
I've heard that before. I don't believe that. I don't think it's that you eat them. I think they crawl in your ear.
Okay.
And harvest on your brains. This is a Halloween episode.
What were the books that you read as a kid? Like
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Fear Street. Come on. So my questions are not as icky, but here we go. Question number 2, Jimmie.
I didn't understand this one.
Okay.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay.
I'm a fan.
Okay. If you had to choose one meal a day, it has to be the same. You have to either choose breakfast, lunch, or dinner. To every time you eat that meal, you only have the wrong utensil. As in, if it's cereal, you only have a fork. If it's a steak, you only have a spoon. Which meal are you choosing?
Do I get to pick the food, or you just get to pick?
You have to pick a meal every day.
No matter what you get for that meal.
So, like, if you never eat cereal, I might go with breakfast because I can live with a fork.
I mean, I feel like I can get enough Cheerios on a fork to.
That's a good strategy.
That's impressive.
Loop them in
Threading
there,
them like a.
And I'm gonna say I don't eat breakfast all the time, so I guess breakfast. Yeah.
Okay. What's your go-to breakfast when you do eat breakfast?
I mean, I want my steak to be unencumbered. Let me say it that way. So I definitely would not. I think I would say what I wouldn't do as opposed to what I would.
That's
so
good.
I think I could eat a steak with a spoon. Right now, I haven't had real food in 3 months. I could eat a steak with a spoon, no doubt.
I'll buy the steak just to watch you try.
Don't tempt me with a good time, Jared. Anyways, sorry. Question number 3.
All right, Jimmie, question number 3. You got a magic button that you can push anytime you want that is going to deposit $250 cash into your bank account. But every time you push that button for the next 24 hours, you will be continuously, mildly inconvenienced. So you push the button, $250 is yours, but you're going to spill a drink on your lap. You're going to get hot by every train. The internet's going to be glitchy at the office.
Catch your pinky toe on the corner when you walk around.
Yeah.
Your mom's going to smash your head into a trophy case after you get saved. Stuff like that.
Walking through a Walmart parking lot, you're going to bang your shin on a trailer hitch.
Yeah, I've been in the ministry for 23 years.
So my question, though, is how often are you pushing that button?
I feel like a lot because I'm in the ministry, and so I've been inconvenienced a lot. So I might as well have the cash.
And I could have used $250 a lot.
No, I mean, so inconvenience. So describe inconvenience.
Nothing that's going to ruin your life.
Okay.
But it'll certainly kind of ruin your day.
Air conditioner goes out in your car.
Yep.
Okay.
Between here and the house, you get caught by 2 funeral processions.
You're asking how often I would hit it?
Mm-hmm. It's 24. Every time you hit the button, it's 24 hours of.
I think it'd be those days where you're like, this might as well happen.
Yeah.
That'd be like, yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay, Garfield.
Yeah. So, yeah. Go ahead.
At least once a week. Okay.
Sure.
All right.
That's a good answer. Question number 4, Jimmie. Simple one. Would you rather have a magic wand or a time machine?
Caveat: you cannot use the magic wand for time travel.
Correct. And you cannot use the time machine for magic. Sorry.
What?
Sorry.
And you can't roller skate in a buffalo herd. Anybody who gets that.
Brother.
What is that?
Roger Miller.
Roger Miller.
You want to go toe to toe for Roger Miller
great.
lyrics?
This guy will beat you at
We are the
lyrics.
old men in the room.
Yeah, that's right.
I was going to say, when you guys are talking about starting out ministry, I was in college.
You would know
Maybe
Roger
high
Miller as the rooster from
Correct.
Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Robin Hood and Little John running through the
Yep.
That's
Sorry.
it.
So
Anyway, I digress.
magic wand or time machine?
I mean, I am a child of the 80s, and so the time machine just appeals to me.
Where we're going.
DeLorean.
We don't need roads.
Yeah, it just appeals to me in a different,
Yeah.
opportunity. I think so. A time machine.
Where would you go? What would your first stop be?
See, I was going to try to formulate a question that was like, if you could go back to Jimmie and when he was 15 and tell him one thing, but it can't be like an emotional, serious thing, what would it be?
You can't do that. You can't. Haven't you seen the movies?
Well, yeah.
Then
Your mom's going to try to date you and stuff if that happens. That'd be weird. But yeah, so yeah, what would you do with a time machine?
Yeah, where would you go with a time machine?
Era?
Well,
The WWF Attitude Era. That's what Daniel would do.
Here we go. No, I just definitely feel like, I mean, I know it's the cliche answer in our circles.
Say Jesus.
Yeah, I mean,
come on, that's a good answer. I'm not going to say you're wrong, but you could be more.
Do you know? I just saw an interview with one of your favorite actors, Ant-Man. What's his name?
Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
Paul Rudd answered legitimately, said, if I could meet anybody in history, it would be Jesus Christ. And it was a little bit, but he said, wouldn't you, if he is who he says that he was,
sure,
yeah,
wouldn't you want to spend a little bit of time and say, all right, walk me through some of this?
Did you tell Paul Rudd you can know Jesus today?
Yeah, I wasn't interviewing.
I thought
Paul
it was another
Rudd.
podcast you're on. Sorry.
Yeah, that wasn't. I saw it on Facebook Reels.
Gotcha.
But he, the others laughed, and he was like, "No, legitimately, wouldn't that be
the whole world measures time based on the life of Christ?"
I mean, so So I thought, wow.
I would have said like the 1950s, like Greece, that era. I would have liked to gone back to that. But Jesus, good answer too. Cool. I like that.
I mean, Paul Rudd is the actor. I would even say comedian that answered, are you a practicing Jew? He says, no, I don't practice. I perfected it. I mean, that's his standard bit. Yeah. But for him to say, no, I mean, if Jesus is who he says that he is, then I'd want to spend some time with him to kind of get to know that for myself. And I was like,
see, my first thought was go see the Beatles live. You made me feel like a bad pastor.
Oh, here we go. All right, so I think that, I mean, I would like to go back and spend time with grandparents, my mom. I mean, there's other things that you would, at least want to observe, even if you're not able to interact with those people.
Sure.
Observe them in that way, nostalgia in your own lifetime. So almost like a Sam Beckett quantum leap. If I could only move in my lifetime, that would be definitely go back to those people for sure. So.
That's good.
That's a great answer.
It is a good answer. Question 5, Jared, you got it?
Question 5. Would you rather be fluent in every language or a master of every musical instrument?
I have a love for language. I wish I would spend some more time. In fact, if I have the opportunity to finish a current educational project, I think I do want to spend some time learning a language. I love languages. I know pieces.
Where did you go on that? Swahili?
I know a little bit of Swahili, just very little conversational Swahili. But then my favorite phrase, "Mimi nataka kukuambia juu ya Yesu wangu." I want to tell you about my Jesus. Yeah. And so I learned that phrase, and it was just a beautiful moment because my translator, I'd been preaching in English, and he's translating for all of the Tanzanians that are there, and I am preaching and going back and forth, and so I'd memorized that phrase, and I was doing Isaiah, and I said, who will go before us? I lift my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord. And I asked that question, where does my help come from? And I said, Mimi nataka kukuambia juu ya Yesu wangu. And they all,
lost their minds.
I mean, just loved it. They do this beautiful, roll their tongues and make this beautiful sound and cheering at just the very name of Jesus in their heart language, spoken by this white guy. And what was awesome is my translator, without missing a beat, not prepped, turned to the American and says, "I want to tell you about my Jesus."
That's awesome.
And with the same enthusiasm, it was a neat moment. And I think that our work on the border with Spanish probably would be the language that I would really try to pursue. Again, I know students and stuff listen to the podcast, and so, man, learn Spanish. Yeah. Learn Spanish because it's only going to serve you well.
Yep.
Particularly if God keeps you in Texas. Learn Spanish because you'll go farther probably in business, but also you're going to have more and more of people that need to hear the gospel in that heart language. Yeah. And so you're going to need to learn as much Spanish as you can. And then, other languages as you have opportunities to do that as well.
I think it was Tony Wolfe at Launch Week a couple years ago said something to the effect of, the Great Commission, Matthew 28, Jesus said, "Go to all the nations." But we live in a time and in a country where all the nations are coming to us. And there's such a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think so. Music appeals to me a little bit. I mean, I'm not musically inclined very much at all. I like to sing. I like to, just today, my son and I were listening to Ricky Skaggs' Country Boy, and we're just marveling at, the mandolin and the violin and all. I'm sorry, fiddle. And so all of the, all the instruments that are played at just this high level within bluegrass music anyway, but just amazing ability. So there, part of me, the hee-haw, last of the hee-haw generation people, is, seeing Roy Clark or somebody up there that can just basically move from instrument to instrument. That's pretty cool. But I think languages would serve me better where I am right now.
It's interesting you mentioned Roy Clark. I just saw an interview where somebody asked Jimi Hendrix, what does it feel like to be the greatest guitar player in the world? And he said, you'll have to ask Roy Clark.
Wow.
Yep. Is that good?
Cool. Yeah.
Who's Roy Clark?
Come on.
He was a country singer, songwriter, and host of Hee Haw.
I'm a pickin'.
Okay.
I'm a grinning.
I'm Daniel. And we're back with the second part of our podcast.
Okay.
No, that's good.
This is how you lose your student audience.
So good, solid answers, Jimmie, to our 5 randoms. And let's jump into the second part of our mission focus for launch. Start here, don't stay here.
Yeah.
So where we left off, you are serving at Mount Olivet. And then let's talk about what has led you to where you are today. So you transitioned after how many years there?
So I was a pastor for 5 years. And there's an old saying that says, those who can't do, teach.
There you go.
Those who can't pastor become directors of missions. No, that is not true. Or maybe it is, and I'm just fooling myself. But the people who took an interest in me early on saw my appreciation and love for Baptists working together. If you don't know, if you're new to Southern Baptist life, Southern Baptist churches in particular, or in general for sure, but in particular Southern Baptists, they are autonomous. And what that means is there's no governing entity. We don't have a pope, or we don't have a bishop. We don't have someone at Nashville or the state convention office telling us this is how you operate. Yeah. But we've realized very early on that it's better for Baptists to work together than apart from one another.
That's right.
And so we've established things for missions and education and other opportunities to function together. Hospitals, other enterprises that we've done as works together as Baptists. And so I just love the work of the local association. It's the oldest realization of that partnership. Obviously, there's the Southern Baptist Convention. There's 2 state conventions. There's all the different state conventions across the United States. But Baptists working together has always been something that I've appreciated. Pastors that I've had before me put me in that position. And then our director of missions, when I came here, just really, like I said, I'm talking to Jared, he took an interest in some young pastors coming in and really wanted to stoke a fire of love for that partnership work.
And how long have you been in this position now?
So I've just started my 9th year, which is wild.
Crazy.
So this is the longest job I've ever had in my life. All my time in the Air Force, multiple jobs in the Air Force, and then 5.5 years as a student minister, associate pastor, and then 5 years as a senior pastor.
Well, I'm gonna toot your horn a little bit here. Say 2 things. Number one, and I've told you this before, I don't know that I've ever met anybody that was as perfect for the job they have as you are in this role, with your upbringing and your knowledge of the area and just all the connections you have and all the people you know, and you're just understanding of. I mean, I think you're even working on a thesis right now or a project right now about doing ministry in this context. I mean, you just have such a great understanding of that.
And a heart for that,
Great at that
I appreciate
job.
that. Yeah. Go ahead. I like hearing how great I am.
He signs my checks, not yours. That's good.
Oh, Daniel. we got a meeting after this.
Also, you're incredible at building amazing staffs. Right, Jared?
That's the second thing I was
Sorry.
going to say.
Woodworking? I didn't know y'all knew about that. So that's
second.
Yeah, Yeah. So let's go back a little bit. So the transition.
I have amazing bow staff skills.
Good job, Napoleon. So the calling to associational work, right? 9 years ago. Just talk a little bit about what that looked like, that process, and
So I had
because Jerry was in this position for how long?
16 and a half years, I think.
Okay.
It's almost 17 years. And so the way it was going to work, Jerry had already been talking to me about that process. David Miller, we thought, was going to retire.
Yeah. David was the
associate.
Yeah.
Worked here at the office. The thought was he was going to retire earlier. There were some health concerns, and there were some shifts in, the housing market, everything else that had changed. And so he said, let me push that off and really push that past where Jerry wanted to retire. So Jerry his thought was, hey, look, I'm going to give about a year and a half, bring Jimmie in as the associate, and hope that they just see him in that function and give him the opportunity to have that job. And so when it came down for Jerry to retire, he said, I really do want you to not put your name in for the search committee because I really want you to apply for this. And I had a couple friends. I had my friend, all of our mutual friend, Rusty, Derek Hicks, others who thought, man, this I really can't see you in that role. They were concerned that, hey, do you have the resume to put that together, experience to put that together? And so I really thought it was at least let me go through the experience of what this is like, because I do feel like maybe associational life was something I wanted to be a part of down the road. I felt like that was where God was, just tooling me, preparing me. And so I felt like that would be a place that I would like to serve in some capacity. So if this was only going to be a pat on the back, we think a lot of you, kid. Well, then it was, hey, we're down to the top 5, and we're going to bring all of you for this formal interview. I thought still, okay, well, so there's great candidates out there. Some of these have initials behind their name more than just M's, have some D's in the back of that. And so I was very excited to get that call, came in, and I think really just sold them on if I sold them. They definitely they spent, it was a 9-person committee. They spent a lot of time in prayer and preparation of that, considering what that looked like. There was some resistance. Some of them, honestly, I don't think they wanted to hire just Jerry's guy, is what I was told later on. And so there was a little bit of resistance, like, hey, we just don't want to just rubber stamp this. We want to think through it.
But also, you were not 40.
Yeah, I was 37.
You had pastored one church.
I've pastored one church.
You were the youngest guy on that short list.
I was, when I became DOM, I was the youngest. I was not the youngest ever, but I was the youngest DOM in the state.
Yeah.
I'm obviously not any longer, but there's other young guys who've come in since then, and there really is a youth movement in associational life,
which is great.
It really is, and I'm thankful for it. The story I was told is there were kind of 2 or 3 different people that they were talking about, and they were at Hillcrest Baptist Church in Jasper, and they went to the altar and said, well, let's just spend some time in prayer at the altar. And so they all prayed, and they came back in the room, and it was just one of those moments where they said, hey, I think it's Jimmie. Yeah. And they called me that day. Of all things, I happened to be here. I was dropping off something here at the office, and I got the call while sitting around talking to Jerry and David and our ministry assistants, and I was sitting in that room, and I got the call from the chairman, and I thought, well, maybe this is it, or maybe this is where I find out, because I was all prepared to say, well, I appreciate y'all thinking about me. Yeah. It's an honor to be nominated. Try to go through that, trying to build it up in my head, because I really felt like that was the way it was going to go. Rusty and Derek, who were on this committee, kind of said, hey, I just don't know if it's going to be you. I just need to prepare you for that. And so Brother Larry gets on the phone. He doesn't know any of that, backstory of any of that. He calls and says, Jimmie, I got to tell you, buddy, it just falls on me to, brother, I hate to be the guy to call and tell you this, but, after looking at all the candidates we had and looking at what we needed, we're going to ask you to become the 4th director of missions of this association. And I was like, And he says, I got you there, didn't I? I was like, because I was already, I mean, my head's reeling. I need to say the right thing.
You were practicing your
I need to,
resignation.
Exactly. Let me bow out gracefully in a way that I can continue to serve in this association.
While I'm in this office.
Yes, in this office.
A grenade on the way out the door.
Yeah. And so he was very congratulatory and laughing it off. And so I immediately, being me, I walked right into Jerry's office and started measuring window blinds and things like that. So so I was very excited and got phone calls and called in and so it was just a really, my church already knew. There's a few people in my church that knew that process was underway.
Yeah.
The process at the time, we were 3 different associations at the time, so I had to go be voted in by 2 of those 3 associations, by I think 75% or something like that, and I had to go to each of those association meetings and they have to do the whole thing. Of course, my own association knew me well. The association of my father knew me well. The one and my friend Rusty Mott is the moderator of the other one, and so I had to go to those. But by the time that happened, I'd already told my church that this is a real possibility because we could have those things happen. There's somebody trying to call me. I appreciate that. No, I'm good. That they got declined for this time. You have to have a number that pops up other than wireless caller for me to try to take that. But I loved. I've loved from the very get-go the opportunity to serve in this capacity. It's amazing that someone would pay me for this because I'd say I'd almost do it for free, but I've got a wife and 2 kids.
And kid in college, stuff.
Let me backtrack just a little bit because you mentioned earlier about kind of the Southern Baptist churches were not autonomous. We work together. Can you just give the listeners, because there may be some younger ones out there who have met you at camp and things like that and hear us talk about the SNBA, hear about Jimmie being the director of missions. Just give us kind of an overview for those who may not be familiar with what exactly it is that you do. Like what is the role of the SNBA and of the DOM?
That's the fearful question of anybody because I'm like, it's going to get out that I really don't do that. No, I have the joy of supervising new church plant, or getting to work alongside churches that want to plant a new church. We don't do that a lot in our association because we're very saturated with the number of churches to the population density that we have.
Because we range from where to where, and how many churches do we have?
So we have 96 churches that from the north side to Milam area. So that's up north of the lakes, North Lakes area, all the way down to essentially the north side of Beaumont. But we also dip down into Vidor with Lakeview and Pecan Acres.
The southernmost church on the map for the SNBA.
That's right. And then we kick over with a little boot heel or boot toe really over towards Nome and China. But then we have I think 8 counties that we touch with different churches that are partnered with us. So we're the largest rural association in Texas as far as number of churches. Because we really have no major town, a Lumberton. Beaumont is that, but we really have 2 churches that are on the north side of that have a Beaumont address.
But also, like you mentioned earlier, when you came in, there was 3 associations working together, and one of the things you've accomplished here is merge those into one.
Yeah, so we developed what we call the Path Forward plan to merge those 3 associations into one operational association. In many ways, they were already operating that way.
But now formally on paper.
Yeah, so I was going to 30 business meetings a year when I first got here because we would go to executive board meetings and mission development council meetings, and we'd have the area committee meetings
for times
3, and so it was just a lot. And so we said this is probably not spending our time in meetings is probably not the most productive we can be, and so we had time to evaluate that and kind of think through that. And again, anytime you do something change, it's going to have some resistance,
especially in the Baptist world.
Sure. And so we have certainly paid the cost of some of that transition, but it's been a blessing overall because people have seen us be able to connect people that are on the north side of our association with people from Nome or China. And we've this past weekend we took 10 pastors and their wives to Galveston, and they were from all over. It was a blessing because they were from all over our association. We're just from the populous south side of our association. They were from the farthest north reaches of our area, and came with us on a kind of a little retreat, and it was a great time.
And it's a strong, active association. The SNBA is very active.
Yeah, we do a lot of things together.
I've been in churches besides this one, I've served in churches in 2 other associations, and they struggle. They seem to kind of limp along. They're trying, but it's hard to get churches on board. And it seems like a lot of you said 96 churches in the SNBA?
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of buy-in from
pastors
a lot of those
and churches.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
We have. Let me say, I took over the helm of a very efficient, smooth running ship by the people before me.
And immediately ran it into the rocks.
Exactly.
Just ran it aground.
Exactly. But J.P. Owens, and then as a kid, I knew B.C. McCoy, who was the second director of missions, and then Jerry Redkey, and then me. And so so I'll speak to B.C. McCoy and Jerry Redkey, and they had a different maybe style of management, leadership in some ways, but had a very developed people for the sake of the ministry that we do together. We're relational in the things that they did. J.P. Owens, that is certainly the story of being very relational with the pastors and connecting with them. And so you asked what I do. So a lot of it is, the unofficial title always is pastor to pastors.
Pastor to pastors, yeah.
And so we get to spend a lot of time doing that because it is a safe place for pastors to come and share their heart and their discouragement, but also kind of their dreams and, am I crazy in this? And can you help me walk through this?
And they think that they're alone in their struggle, but they don't realize that we hear this all the time. So
yeah. So the conflict resolution, but mostly trying to activate people towards a missional front. So director of missions, thinking missionally about everything that you do, and getting pastors to think beyond just my job is to fill a pulpit on Sunday and to visit people in the hospital. Yeah. What is our church? What is our community? Who is the people God has sent us to? And whether that's here, near, there, or everywhere, where has God sent us next to be Great Commission oriented church?
Because a lot of our churches are small, rural congregations, but through the work of the SNBA, you've got these little, you mentioned places like Nome and China and Milam. Through their giving and their participation with the SNBA, they are directly investing overseas in church plants here in the area. They're providing, and so educational opportunities for local pastors. There's so much good stuff that happens through this office that alone these smaller churches would never even be on their radar.
Yeah, absolutely.
They wouldn't have access to.
One of the great things about being in a rural association is what we've been able to do, and I know we're here on the Launch Point podcast, but Launch. And before that, the SNBA camp week was a huge factor because rural association churches probably don't have the mobilizing forces to go to a big student life camp out on Orange Beach, or to go to Glorieta or Ridgecrest or some other place that they get the opportunity to come into their local area with a partnership with East Texas Baptist Encampment. We've been able to host a really top-notch, for years, long before I was here, a top-notch camp, a state-level camp, in my opinion, here in our back door, backyard. And so I'm very thankful for that partnership, which is not always what you see association. Right. So, like you said, if you were to leave here and go somewhere else, like, what are y'all doing for student ministry? Well, we have a conference once a year, or we do this. We're very unique in that, and it allows our association to have a direct link to evangelism and discipleship products that a lot of associations don't have the opportunity to do. And so that's a very unique thing about the work of our association.
Another thing I love about this area is, for example, you grew up in Jasper, and then you were at Mount Olivet and Fred, and now you're here. And who was the pastor at Mount Olivet after you?
Wesley
Smith, who before that was a youth pastor at Nome or China?
Nome.
Yeah. And then he followed you to Mount Olivet, and now he's the director at East Texas. And years before him, Van Lowe was the camp director out there, whose son, Jeff Lowe, is now the pastor over at Crestwood and Lumberton. I just love that stuff.
Yeah.
I know that's real inside baseball for this office, but I love that stuff.
No, it
that
absolutely.
Generational.
Yes, absolutely. There is a great joy to see people that, the pastors who are serving in multiple churches had some time in another church in our association. There's a lot of that. We're not against one another.
Yeah.
We're partners in this work of ministry. And yes, there's a little bit of, hey, you got our guy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a joy to see guys have a larger platform sometimes to do ministry in, or transition. They go away for a season, they come back. Not mentioning any names, Rusty Mott, but they, there's guys who just see the tremendous value of relational partnerships in ministry that you really don't get to have in other places. And so, developing, again, even the premise that when we talked about that early on, start here, don't stay here, that mentality of there is something that needs to start here.
Yeah.
Because whether they stay geographically here or not, they're not always going to be under your leadership as a student pastor or in your church ministry. You send them out, and you get to do some really awesome things.
So at the time of this recording, you are gearing up for the SNBA annual meeting happening this weekend, Sunday.
Or it just happened.
Depending on when this
releases.
Sunday,
so it was
October
either
20th.
it's going to be a great event, or it was really a great event.
So
edit accordingly. Yes.
You can get all the paperwork. You can get access to all that stuff. But give us a highlight, one thing you're looking forward to announcing or sharing or talking about at this annual meeting. You're going to have, dozens.
We
and
invite
dozens
messengers from every church to attend. And it's an opportunity. Tell the annual meeting just real quick. For those who don't know, they get to come in and hear what the work that we are doing throughout the year, get all the reports, and hear all the exciting things the Lord's doing.
Yeah, there's the business stuff. But I want to.
So we'll
give us a highlight.
Yeah,
we'll have one of the highlights for me is we'll have 160 to 200 people that will represent 30 to 50 of our churches. That will meet together on a Sunday night all together from the most northern part to the most southern part, east, west. They will come to Silsbee, Texas on a Sunday night to sing songs to the Lord, to study under His Word, to hear reports of what God has done in our churches, to connect with our Hispanic work, to grow in partnerships with one another, to know how the resources that they're sending from their church are being utilized for great commissional things. I get to stand before them and say, look, we've done a great job with seminary extension in the past. We have the opportunity to revamp that and even give people a platform in the future. So we're currently looking at a phase of how do we take seminary extension programs, so Baptist or like a Bible college programs, how do we take that and apply that in our context? And then how do we bounce off of that and say, now you have the opportunity to take these resources, these hours that you've earned, and go apply that to an MDiv at New Orleans Seminary in Louisiana, which is a partnership that we're trying to build currently right now. So we get to talk about that. We get to talk about a church building. Not so fun to talk about, church that has closed its doors. One church that closed its doors has given us the facility. We're going to be able to sell that to another evangelical work here. It's not a Southern Baptist church, but it's an evangelical work that's celebrating the same Jesus that we celebrate. They're going to be able to continue and grow their church ministry by buying this facility. Those resources get to do missional work in our area and to the ends of the earth. Yeah. And then another facility, this past January, it's closed down, but we're going to be able to utilize that facility to do things like retreats and conferences and DNOWs and other things that make that available there on the lake, on the north side of Sam Rayburn Lake, and make that available to our churches to utilize for their own ministry benefits. And so we get to do all of that together. And if we were one isolated church trying to do it on our own, none of that would have been possible. So that's what I love to get to celebrate at our annual meeting.
And you can tell it sitting here across from you. You're fired up.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Ready to go. Yeah.
Sure.
You're good at your job, man.
Well, I try, and then about noon I get over it. So
Well, one part of your job, like you mentioned, is launch, and we are super excited to have the launch conference coming up on November the 9th.
Saturday, November 9th.
Which is coming up pretty quick. And, man, we are super pumped. Right now, actually, this is an update, Jared. I don't know if you even know this. You can go to launchsnba.com/conference, and not only Youth Pastor can you register your group, $20 per person. You don't pay till you get there, but you can get your group signed up. But now you can see a list of all of our breakouts. I believe we have 15 on the site. I think there's one more I still need to add.
Yep.
But they are listed out. You can go see descriptions. You can show them to your students, get them excited. It's going to be a fantastic event.
All three of us are all three of us doing breakout sessions?
I'm going to be leading a panel discussion, I think.
Moderating one.
Yes.
Jimmy and I are both doing a breakout
I'm doing
session.
a breakout
We
session.
got Danny Jackson preaching. It's going to be at First Baptist Silsbee. It is for all students to come to. Youth pastors, get them signed up. It's going to be a stinking
It's going to be a great
blast,
time.
man. We're really excited for it. So, hey, Jimmy, thank you. I know it's a super busy week as we both had, but thank you so much for carving out some time for us to be able to sit down and share a little bit about the work the Lord is doing in and through this association.
Guys, look at us.
Man,
Look at
Get a
us.
load of us.
Look at the dream.
Who would have thought?
Who'd have thunk it?
Not
Love
me.
it.
Jerry Redkey did.
It was maybe so.
He saw something in
Maybe
us.
so.
Well,
Thanks, Jerry.
thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.